She said she was stuck in traffic, but the live map showed she was parked outside his building. I was halfway through rinsing coffee grounds out of the French press when my phone chirped with the kind of message you dismiss until it burns a hole in your pocket. Stuck in traffic. I'll be late. Don't wait up. Lena added the little anxious face she uses for everything from printer jams to existential dread. And then, 3 minutes later, a heart. I wiped my hands on the towel, thumb hovering over a reply. Something light and forgiving. Then habit, no, muscle memory, took me into the Find My tab the way other people open weather apps when they can already feel the rain. Lena's car icon blinked in a cluster of streets I didn't recognize immediately. The city map was a nervous system in shades of charcoal. Her dot pulsed a tender green. Stuck in traffic, I told the empty kitchen. But the line under her name read, parked. I zoomed in. The tiles reorganized like a patient exhaling. The pin landed on a curb across from a glassy building I'd seen on a gala invitation. A place with a concierge desk and a lobby piano, and a landlord who didn't do pets. Victor's building. I'd know that serifed V anywhere. It was on the step and repeat Lena had posted from the foundation fundraiser. Her smile calculated against someone else's success. My mouth did that stupid half laugh it does when I stub my toe. Parked. 26 minutes. The app doesn't lie about motion. It calculates tiny tremors. The kind you can't fake by shaking your phone. She was there. The car was off. The dot was a fixed bead in a silk map. I called anyway. Her voice picked up with a rush of sound I used to think of as grown-up life. A wash of honks, a squeal of brakes, one siren crying itself smaller. Hey, she said. You okay? Then, too quickly, I'm at the circle by the river. It's gridlocked. I'm starving. On my screen, the dot did not blink. It just breathed, calm as a sleeping pet. Which circle? I asked, and hated my voice instantly. The way suspicion snuck into its vowels. She rattled off an intersection nowhere near Victor's address, a familiar landmark and the name of a bagel shop. Behind her, a laugh, low and male, zipped through the connection like a paper cut. Did you hear that? She said. Someone's got their windows down. It's chaos. I watched time accrue underneath the word parked, a timer for someone else's evening. Come home safe, I said, and let the call end. I told myself all the polite lies, that she'd pulled over to take a call. Then, the car ahead moved, and she'd slipped back into traffic before the app could register. That her company had a volunteer event in the neighborhood. These things happen. The city is a maze. Our phones are fallible when they want to be. But the coffee tasted like the bottom of a burnt candle, so I poured it out and made more, just to do something, and stood with my hip against the counter while the kettle breathed. On the couch, the throw blanket Lena likes to cocoon herself in lay open like an empty chrysalis. I pretended not to see the lipstick print on the rim of a water glass we'd left in the sink this morning. Bright coral, not Lena's usual shade. At minute 41 of parked, I took a screenshot. Not because I intended to accuse, because I am a person who believes in evidence. And evidence has rescued me from my own storytelling more times than I care to admit. I store proof the way some people keep talismans. Quietly, guiltily, out of superstition as much as need. A second screenshot. I cropped the name of the building, feeling petty, then uncropped it because petty is better than foolish when you're measuring the temperature of your life. She texted at 8:17. Moving now. Might stop for food. Want anything? The green dot still didn't move. I typed, no thanks, and deleted it, typed pad thai, deleted that too, and settled on, I'm good. My finger hovered over the little gray arrow until the message sent, and I felt like a child giving away a toy to keep another kid from noticing the missing screw. Time ruins even clean rooms. I circulated through hours like an anxious planet, orbiting quiet objects that suddenly quarantined their own meaning. Her sweater draped on the back of a chair. The faint shadow of someone's cologne, not mine, caught in the fibers. A post-it on her laptop with a list. Sponsor quotes, Instagram reel cuts, call V, after 7. The V was just a letter, and the building over on the map was just an address, and I was just a man staring at two unrelated dots and drawing a line. I took a photo of the post-it anyway, embarrassed at the reflex, but not enough to stop. At 8:31, the green bead blinked once and shifted a centimeter, which is what happens when the phone checks in with a different tower and remembers the Earth is round. 8:32, still parked. I opened the camera roll to delete the extra screenshots and saw the picture from Sunday. Lena laughing around a cup of coffee that said Rialto, in a font I loved for its ugly sincerity. The Rialto was the cafe in the bottom of Victor's building. The receipt from that morning, because I am a person who does his budgeting, sat folded in my wallet. The timestamp lined up with the moment my dumb heart had posted a story calling her luck. Evidence can make you feel smart enough to hurt. I nearly called my sister. Maya doesn't do subtlety. She thinks honesty is like ripping off the wax strip. Painful, efficient, briefly bracing, but I could hear her already. You're 29, Ethan. If you see smoke, you don't hold a teacup under it and wait to see if it tastes like fire. Instead, I texted, random question. If someone says they're stuck, but the app says parked, could that just be like semantics? 3 dots. Semantics is what people say when they're choosing words instead of truth, she replied. What happened? I typed and erased different versions of the facts and finally sent nothing. At 8:44, I put on my jacket. It wasn't a thought. My body just decided to be vertical and moving. I don't follow people. I don't snoop. I don't rush to conclusions because my brain is trained on patterns that can look like destiny but are usually noise. I left anyway, locking the door with the care of someone who wants the lock to like him afterward. Outside, the air was a soup of exhaust and damp leaves. The walk to the subway was muscle memory. I didn't look at the map again, just fixed the address in a corner of my mind and trusted my own feet. Twice on the train, I composed apologies I would never say. I'm sorry. For what? For not believing? Or for believing too precisely? I surfaced into a different city. The sidewalks of Victor's Street were aspirational. Trees that had opinions about space, a dog in a waxed jacket, windows that didn't show you their inside because they assumed you knew. The building itself was an optical trick, the kind of place that makes you doubt you belong, even if you do. Inside, the lobby was the temperature of a museum. All echoed piano and polite flowers. A man at the front desk looked up with a face that practiced being a face for hours. Good evening. I considered the script. Delivery guy, wrong address, friend in trouble. But lies felt like a luxury I hadn't paid for. I'm waiting for someone, I said, because that was the truest thing. He nodded at a pair of couches so sleek they looked like opinions you couldn't afford. I didn't sit. I stood near the window and watched my reflection wobble over the street where Lena's car would have been if cars were allowed to feel ashamed. My phone vibrated. A photo from her, a carton of noodles, captioned, Carb Therapy LOL. The timestamp said 9:07. I was close enough to the ground to see the food places on the block. None of them used that kind of container. The gray arrow next to our thread flashed, read. I imagined her thumb leaving a faint print. I imagined Victor's thumb on the same screen, guiding her into the right kind of story. Can I help you with anything? The concierge asked. His badge said OLEG, which felt like the kind of name that knows more than it says. He had the gentlest shoulders. I showed him my most reasonable smile. I'm actually trying to figure out if a friend left something here earlier, I said. Around 8? He tilted his head in a way that wasn't no. People leave things everywhere, he said, and poured himself water. Keys, scarves, names. The lobby doors sighed. A woman in a red coat crossed the marble, the heels of her boots making that decisive little click I used to hear when Lena came home late and tried to be quiet and failed. She pressed the elevator button without looking around. The doors opened like an answer, closed like a secret. That sound has its own gravity. Outside again, the night had the slickness of a fresh bandage. I stood on the pavement across from the entrance and looked up at a slice of windows, anonymized squares. I don't know which floor Victor lives on. I only know the angle of his signature and the way people say his name like a password. My phone chimed. Leaving now. From Lena. The map refreshed, the dot drifted into motion, then stilled at a light, then moved again. I watched her icon glide away from the building like a boat from a dock. I wanted to run after it. I wanted to get in a cab and go home and erase the screenshots and ask her about her day and make pasta and talk about nothing until nothing softened the shape of everything. Instead, I took one last screenshot. The dot as it slipped past the corner, the timestamp, the tiny arrow labeling the street. I saved it to an album I named simply 800. It was a ridiculous thing to do, a cruelty against myself, a preemptive footnote. But I had the clear, cold sense of someone stepping onto a scale the morning after a feast. What's done is done, but measured. It can be understood. When I finally went home, the apartment felt like someone had set it to airplane mode. I washed the one glass in the sink twice. I opened the window to change the air. I put my phone face down and lay beside it like a dog that trusts a leash more than instinct. And when the door opened an hour later and the smell of takeout came in ahead of her, I had decided nothing, only that I would remember every second of what came next. The next morning, she was all warmth and casual chatter, the kind that used to make me forget bad dreams before breakfast. Lena padded into the kitchen in one of my old shirts, hair damp, smelling like a different shampoo than yesterday. She kissed my cheek, too lightly, and started talking about how crazy the traffic had been, how she'd almost stopped for dessert but decided noodles were enough. I nodded along, waiting for her to slip up. I hated myself for listening that way. While she poured coffee, I noticed a folded receipt peeking from the pocket of her tote. I didn't reach for it, at least not yet. But my eyes read the print upside down anyway. Rialto Cafe, timestamp, 8:06 p.m. My throat tightened. That was the exact minute her car had been motionless in front of Victor's building. I told myself to let it go, to act normal. But my hands were already opening my banking app when she ducked into the bathroom. There it was. A charge from Rialto. Same time, same card she always used. I took a screenshot before I even thought about what I was doing. Proof wasn't comfort. It was just heavier to carry. By the time she left for work, I had called Maya. If someone tells you they're stuck in traffic but the map says parked, I began. She cut me off. Ethan, if you already checked, you're past trusting. So what else do you have? I told her about the receipt, the laugh in the background, the noodles photo that didn't match any place nearby. Either you're wrong and you owe her an apology, she said, or you're right and you owe yourself the truth. But pick one. You can't live in between. I decided on neither. I opened my laptop instead, logging into the public staff calendar for the foundation. There was nothing scheduled in that neighborhood, not yesterday, not all week. I clicked through old posts on their social media and found a photo from Sunday's staff brunch. Lena, smiling beside Victor. The tagged location? The restaurant right next to his building. That afternoon, I walked past the building, pretending to check messages. Oleg, the concierge from the night before, spotted me through the glass and stepped out. Back again? He asked with a small smile. I admitted I might have left something here. Described a scarf that didn't exist. He tilted his head. We don't keep lost and found for long, but I've seen your friend. She comes by sometimes. My stomach dropped. When? He shrugged. Evenings. Not always alone. Back home, I paced until my phone buzzed with a new notification. A shared team chat update. Someone had posted a group selfie from the office, captioned, "Saving the grant at the last minute." Lena was in the back, half hidden, holding a coffee cup with Rialto's logo. I zoomed in until the image blurred, my pulse in my ears. Later, when she came in, she tossed her bag on the couch and leaned against the doorframe. Rough day, she sighed. Can we not talk about anything heavy tonight? I forced a smile, agreed, and watched her disappear into the shower. When the sound of water covered my steps, I opened her laptop. A draft email sat unsent on the screen. I can't keep doing this. No recipient, no sign-off. Just those words. I stood there for a long time, staring, before closing the lid. I didn't know if I was the one she was writing to or someone else entirely, but I knew, with a certainty that made my hands cold, that the next step would not be gentle. 2 nights later, I crossed a line I'd sworn I wouldn't. I bought a cheap recording device from the electronics shop near my office, the kind small enough to disappear in a pocket. I told myself it was only in case I needed to protect myself from being lied to again. But the truth was simpler. I needed to hear what I couldn't see. I waited until Lena mentioned she was swinging by the office after hours to help Victor prep a presentation for a grant meeting. Her tone was breezy, but I'd learned that breezy is a perfect disguise for careful planning. I slipped the recorder into the side pocket of her tote while she was in the bedroom changing shoes. My heart was thudding so hard I thought she'd hear it over the closet door. She came home late, her mood unreadable, her eyes sliding away from mine like she was afraid they'd reflect too much. We barely spoke before she went to bed. After her breathing settled into sleep, I retrieved the recorder and played it back in the kitchen with the lights off. Most of it was muffled street noise, elevator chimes, footsteps. Then Victor's voice came through. Smooth, low, tinged with annoyance. We can't afford another delay, the grant's on the line. Lena's voice quieter. I know, I'm trying. A pause. Then Victor again. You're not a child. You understand what's expected. I rewound that last sentence twice. There was no warmth in it, no mentorship, just control. It made my stomach turn. The next day, I tried to shake it off at work, but I couldn't focus. I called the foundation's main line and asked for accounting, pretending to be a vendor. A woman named Nadia picked up, her voice brisk but tired. When I hinted that I'd heard there were irregularities in their reports, she went quiet. There are things, she said finally, but you should leave them alone. They're not worth your job, or anyone else's. She hung up before I could ask more. That evening, Maya stopped by unannounced with takeout. We sat on the floor eating straight from the containers while I told her everything. The recorder, the conversation, Nadia's warning. Maya listened, her chopsticks pausing midair. This isn't just about cheating, she said. This is about power. If she's in over her head, she might also be in real danger. I wanted to believe that, because it meant I could see Lena as a victim instead of a betrayer. But then she came home and, without noticing Maya, called out from the hallway. I think I fixed things with him. My sister and I exchanged a look that was half pity, half alarm. Later that night, I asked Lena directly if she'd been at Victor's building earlier in the week. She froze for half a second before smiling and shaking her head. No, why? You know I'd tell you. The lie was so easy for her it almost sounded true. The following morning, I got a text from an unknown number with a voice message attached. When I played it, Victor's voice filled the room. You come tonight and we'll sort this. Otherwise, Those stories of yours go straight to the grant committee. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, wondering which was worse, that she might be hiding an affair, or that she might be trapped in something far more dangerous. Nadia called me the next afternoon from what sounded like a stairwell. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I shouldn't be doing this, she said. But if you're going to help her, you need to see what's really going on. She asked me to meet her near a bus stop across town, handed me a plain USB stick, and walked away without another word. Back home, I plugged it into my laptop. The folder names were bland, reports Q3, social media schedules. But inside were spreadsheets with numbers that didn't make sense. Payments for community outreach billed on Sundays at 11 p.m. Media deliverables, signed by Lena, that corresponded to dates I knew she'd been with me or supposedly at home sick. I scrolled until my head started to pound. This wasn't just sloppy accounting. It was deliberate. That night, I stopped by Victor's building again. Oleg was at the desk, flipping through a paperback. He looked up, recognizing me. "She's here again," he said, like he'd been waiting to tell me. "But you know, she's not the only one. There's another woman, red coat, comes late, leaves late." He leaned forward slightly. "I've been here a long time. When the same story plays out twice, it's not a coincidence." When Lena got home, her face was pale, her hands shaking as she rummaged in the fridge. She sat down across from me, eyes fixed on her lap. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly. My breath caught, but she kept going before I could speak. "I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't lose this job right now. Victor, he knows. He's been covering for me on some mistakes, but..." She broke off, her voice cracking. I wanted to ask if the child was mine, but the question felt like a loaded weapon, and I wasn't ready to fire it. Instead, I asked what Victor was demanding. Her eyes filled, and she whispered, "He says if I keep meeting him, he'll make sure nothing in my records ever reaches the board. He says I owe him that much." It was the kind of confession that left no clean way forward. I could have walked away right then, shut the door on her and all of it, but instead, something colder settled in me. "Then we're going to end this," I told her. "We'll get proof. We'll take it to the people who can burn him down." She shook her head. "He'll deny everything. He'll turn it on me, on us." "Not if we have enough," I said. I could already see the plan forming. Nadia's files, Oleg's word, recordings, time-stamped photos, every scrap that could tie Victor's hands. For the first time in weeks, Lena met my eyes. There was fear there, but something else too. Maybe relief, maybe trust. Whatever it was, I knew the next step wouldn't just decide what happened to Victor. It would decide whether we survived each other at all. We arranged it so Lena would invite Victor to a strategy meeting in the Foundation's conference room after hours. Nadia agreed to be there under the guise of delivering last-minute financial reports. I'd be in the room too, introduced as Lena's partner who's helping with presentation prep, just another civilian hovering over her shoulder. When Victor arrived, he radiated that false charm that smells faintly of cologne and power. "Well, this is unusual," he said, glancing at me. "Didn't know we were turning grant work into a family affair." He sank into a chair, pulling his phone out like he owned the air around us. Lena opened her laptop, hands trembling slightly as she clicked through slides about outreach metrics. Victor interrupted almost immediately, dismissing her numbers, waving off Nadia's printouts. "This is all fine," he said. "But the real problem is execution, which..." He looked at Lena. "We've already discussed privately." That was my cue. I slid a folder across the table. "Maybe we should all discuss it publicly," I said. Inside were the screenshots of Lena's location history. Time-stamped, mapped, cross-referenced with building access logs Oleg had quietly handed over. Victor's smile twitched, then froze. I kept going. "We have receipts from Rialto matching those visits, audio recordings of you making coercive suggestions, and copies of reports with falsified hours." Nadia placed another folder beside mine, this one thicker, filled with transaction spreadsheets from the USB. Victor leaned back, forcing a laugh. "You've been busy. You think anyone's going to take your little conspiracy seriously? I have lawyers. That's why we're not stopping here," Nadia said evenly. "These files are already with the grant committee, and a journalist who's been waiting for a story like this." The room went still. For the first time, Victor's gaze darted between us, measuring odds. I took out my phone and pressed play on the voice message from the unknown number, the one where he'd threatened to send Lena's stories to the committee if she didn't come over. His own words filled the air like smoke. He stood suddenly, knocking his chair back. "You don't know what you're doing." "I think we do," I said. "And I think you just heard how much of it we've already done." Victor left without another word, his phone clenched in his hand. The sound of the door closing behind him was louder than it should have been. Lena sat back, exhaling so hard it shook her shoulders. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but nothing came. She began, then stopped. "I didn't sleep with him." Her voice was quiet, but it wasn't a plea. It was an offering, one I wasn't sure I could accept. I gathered the folders into my bag. "This doesn't fix us," I said finally. but it stops him. That's enough for tonight. When I left her apartment later, suitcase in hand, she didn't try to stop me. The hallway smelled faintly of rain and coffee, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was walking towards something instead of circling the same street forever. The hearing was held in a bland municipal building that smelled faintly of paper and cold air. I hadn't planned to testify, but the grant committee's investigation had unearthed enough irregularities to trigger a formal inquiry. Victor sat at the defense table, his suit crisp, his posture relaxed, like this was just another meeting he could talk his way through. Lena was called first. She looked smaller somehow, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She admitted to signing reports without verifying details, to approving expenses she hadn't directly overseen. Her voice wavered when she spoke about Victor's threats. But she didn't cry. When the panel asked why she hadn't reported him sooner, she said, "Because he made me believe no one would believe me." Oleg testified next, confirming the times Lena had been in the building, the other women he'd seen, the patterns of late-night visits. Nadia followed, presenting the spreadsheets and explaining the coded entries, how outreach and media hours were used to mask misappropriated funds. When they called me, I stuck to the facts, the location screenshots, the receipts, the recordings. I didn't speculate about motives or feelings. I wasn't there to tell them what kind of man Victor was. I was there to give them the pieces so they could see the picture themselves. Victor's lawyer tried to paint me as a jealous boyfriend with too much time and too little trust. But the timestamps and audio didn't care about character assassinations. They were what they were. By the end of the day, the panel announced that Victor would be removed from his position pending further legal proceedings. The foundation's operations were suspended, funding frozen until a full audit could be completed. Outside the building, Lena found me on the steps. She didn't look triumphant. More like someone walking out of a storm into air that didn't quite feel real yet. "I'm keeping the baby," she said, eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't expect you to be part of it, but I wanted you to know." I nodded. "I hope you get the peace you've been looking for." It was the only thing I could give her without lying. We stood there for a moment, the city moving around us, and then she turned and walked away. I didn't follow. Weeks later, I found myself on Victor Street again. Not by accident, but out of something like closure. I stopped across from the building, pulled out my phone, and opened the map app one last time. My location showed a calm blue dot in the middle of the sidewalk. Lena's icon was still there in the sharing list, but grayed out. I hovered over it for a second, then tapped Stop Sharing Location. The confirmation popped up, and I hit Yes. The screen returned to a single dot. Just me. No more tracking. No more waiting for a signal to tell me if I was safe. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked away without looking back.